Man has finally finished Sonic Superstars. Took me long enough as a self-proclaimed moderately big fan of classic Sonic. They finally give me the game I'd basically been asking for since Mania, and yet I had to legitimately force myself to finish it. It's not bad, like, it has issues, but it's overall alright. There's nothing massively wrong with it, and yet it didn't pull me in or captivate me whatsoever during my playthrough. And it seems like this was the general consensus for the game, give or take some people leaning harder in either direction. It's not as if I wasn't interested. I even emulated on Yuzu, God rest its soul, when it broke Street Date, just to play it a bit early. The fact that I went out of my way to play it at launch, but still took a year to actually beat it, makes it pretty clear to me that something was off about it. It just didn't seem to have any real heart. A couple weeks ago there was this article going around about Sega admitting that Superstars underperformed and was a disappointment, and I saw some people calling for classic Sonic to be taken out back in shop because of it. So hang on, my boy misses once and you want him euthanized? By that logic, modern Sonic should have had his shit blown off a long damn time ago. There's no need to overcorrect here. A lot of people say that Superstars failed because it isn't a proper representation of classic Sonic. But on the surface, there's nothing out of place in Superstars. It'd be right at home with the likes of Sonic 3 and 3D Blast. If it had come out on the SATAM, I reckon it'd not only be a respected entry, but one of the more revered ones as well. At the very least, it'd have a cult following like CD. The problem is, Superstars didn't come out on the SATAM in 1995. It came out in the year of our Lord, 2023. It has all the hallmarks of one of the older games, but plays it far too safe and is too focused on emulating those instead of doing anything new and interesting. There's almost no reason to play it instead of Sonic 3 or Mania. It's like if I fed an AI model the prompt, make a classic Sonic game what has a dinosaur in it. A lot of people attribute its bad performance to releasing alongside Super Mario Wonder and sort of use that to paint a narrative that Sonic is just incapable of going blow for blow with Mario, but it's really more the fact that Wonder was a return to form for 2D Mario, while Superstars is very much a new Super Sonic the Hedgehog Wii. Those games, while technically sound, were heavily criticised for how bland and flanderised they were aesthetically, because if even one of Mario's pubic hairs was out of place with the standardised model, Shiggy would bust in and fire the entire dev team. Aside from some tax on gimmicks, the gameplay in Superstars is brought over, more or less, completely untouched from the Genesis titles. Which is nice considering how many tries it took them to get it right, but there's absolutely no originality with how the characters control and the whole thing is played completely straight. The stage locales as well are all just slightly altered versions of existing level themes. There's nothing here that I don't feel like I've already explored a more interesting iteration of in a previous entry. It's a fuck sight better than Sonic 4, but if that's worth any merit then the bar is literally underground. The issue I have is that we've already got 5 cocking games that all play basically the same. Mania is a welcome exception due to its identity as an anniversary title and a direct tribute to the past installments, as well as unofficially acting as a heartfelt apology for Sonic 4, but what reason does Superstars have to copy the exact same formula? You know what Mega Man did when it had 6 games that all had almost identical gameplay? They locked the fuck in and made Mega Man X. Bad example because 7, 8 and Bass and Knuckles were still made, but you probably get the idea. Why not switch things up a bit? Modern Sonic also has the exact same problem at the moment, with Sonic Team getting extremely complacent and just reusing the boost over and over again. They designed an entirely new control scheme for Sonic Frontiers and still couldn't let the damn thing go. For Christ's sake guys, Unleashed is old enough to consent now. So what's the root cause for the creative bankruptcy of Superstars? I think it's pretty clear that what's dragging it down is the entire concept of classic Sonic as a whole. I felt for some time now that the divide between classic and modern will end up being detrimental to the series in due time, and that's because as soon as you stick labels like that on the 2 renditions of Sonic, they immediately limit how creative you can be with the character. Now there are rules, all these specific requirements you need to meet in order to be considered classic, that never existed before. Like they aren't allowed to talk, it has to be a Genesis-style 2D platformer, you can't have any modern-era characters show up in classic games, and the list goes on. Anything that tiptoes outside a very narrow interpretation of classic Sonic games is discouraged, and we just end up with this extremely sterile franchise, desperately attached to its cute, nostalgic imagery, terrified to ever push the envelope a little bit. It's tough to even think about now, but there was a time where this divide did not exist. Sonic was Sonic. The Sonics from Sonic 1 and Sonic Adventure 2 were considered to be the same guy. There was no arbitrary criteria they had to meet, and as such, Sonic just became whatever he needed to be, whatever the developers thought was cool. Obviously there should still be a basic through line, a consistent character, but there should be an inspired vision, not a restricted checklist. Classic Sonic did have simple, cutesy, Mickey Mouse inspired designs. It was more colourful, upbeat and bubbly, but it was also this, and this. And this! Sonic was allowed to be cool, to be experimental, to stand outside the norm. What Sega brands as classic Sonic now is just a shallow copy of the most surface level 90s Sonic shit, with none of the depth or deeper intricacies. It's not a matter of having one or the other, it was the mix of the two that gave Sonic such a wide appeal back in the day. Sonic Team have only done half the job, and it's resulted in this gay, kids-safe, sanitized fucking CBeebies, Blues Clues, Ryan's Toy Reviews version of Sonic. 90s Sonic was about as counterculture as a children's cartoon animal could possibly be. He was badass and had an attitude and was way past cool and hit the old Axl Rose pose right on the downbeat. He smoked fags and hated adults and pissed all over everything. Classic Sonic doesn't piss on anything, apart from Sega's sale expectations. Classic Sonic would never star in an anti-grooming PSA. I mean, he literally couldn't, he can't talk, he'd have to mime it. This guy could see you getting molested and just be entirely unmoved. Yes, I like the westernized interpretation of Sonic Eat My Dick. I just wish this series was given the freedom to innovate and evolve again, to have passionate devs that want to take it in new, interesting directions. Personally, I'd love a 3D classic style game. I know this is considered a bit of a meme to say at this point, but there's still no official game that manages to translate the momentum-based physics that make the classics so fun into 3D yet. I've been playing through every 3D Sonic game recently, and the amount of times I'll play through an automated section just to think, this would be so much more fun if I was in control and I had to clear this obstacle myself, is at least like 5 or 6 times. There's also no reason for Classic to have a total monopoly on 2D Sonic. Modern style side-scrollers were often seen as the most consistent entries during a very schizophrenic period for the franchise, but now I guess anyone who liked those games can eat shit. I really don't see why these things are treated as if they're mutually exclusive, like Classic can only be 2D and Modern can only be 3D, apart from when it does 2D but it's shit. Now I should note that this video is hopefully obviously a bit exaggeratory. I'm hamming it up to try and make the point more clear. Like I said, it's not as if Superstars does anything tremendously wrong apart from just general game design hiccups. So it's not as if I don't like it. In its current form, I still enjoy Classic Sonic at a basic level. But the fact remains, it leaves a fuckload to be desired. Although a bit of an awkward problem would arise if Classic Sonic did miraculously end up sorting its shit out and properly expanded into a worthy contemporary to Modern. And that is, surely there has to be a point where it catches up to Adventure timeline-wise, right? Or if they keep adding new lore and characters, people are going to start to question why none of this shows up in the current Modern games. I mean, they're already gatekeeping characters like Mighty, Ray, and Fang for no good reason. Or if both Classic and Modern can have 2D and 3D outings, what exactly is the point of the division in the first place? It would just seem kinda redundant to have two similar-ish franchises running concurrently that never interact or overlap, to say nothing of how it could be a genuinely confusing barrier to entry for newcomers. The Sonic series is in such a bizarre-ass dilemma. I'm not gonna pretend like I know the answer that will please the most people, and God knows there is no one answer that pleases everyone, but I think the first step is to dissolve the divide between Classic and Modern. When people say that, they usually mean that one of them has to go, but I think they should just be merged into one again. Create a new look for Sonic that, while keeping the lore intact, consolidates the best features of both Sonics. I kinda wanted to make a video about that, but I don't know how popular of a concept that is within the fandom. If the split is gonna keep existing, at least make it like an unspoken rule where if he looks like this, it's set earlier in the timeline, and if he looks like this, it's set later in the timeline. And if he looks like this, it's set really late in the timeline. But again, that kind of falls apart when characters and concepts are banned from appearing outside their respective category. At the very least, if they don't murder him for Superstars not printing enough money, I really want Classic Sonic to properly capture the charm of the 90s era again, and hopefully even start moving beyond that. What? Trip is a sunglazer? Fuck is a sunglazer? Is that another made up animal like Echidna?